Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we got to talk about artificial intelligence once again, because it actually just proved that news stories can be overblown. Now, here's the backdrop on this, and this was obviously very eyebrow raising when it first came to light the last couple of days, and this story caught on like wildfire. But it doesn't seem like it's true. Now, here's what's going on, and here's the backdrop. The U.S. Air Force has denied that it conducted an artificial intelligence or AI simulation in which a drone decided to quote-unquote kill its operator to prevent it from interfering with efforts to achieve its mission. So let's examine this one more in depth. And I'm taking this from The Guardian pretty much verbatim because we need to understand the context here before we dive in. Now, here's what's going on according to virtually every news source that I have read, but I thought they had a good write-up on this. An official last month basically said in a virtual test staged by the U.S. military, an Air Force drone controlled by AI had used, quote, highly unexpected strategies to achieve its goal. Now, the person talking here is Colonel Tucker Hamilton, known as Cinco, and he described a simulation test in which a drone powered by artificial intelligence was advised to destroy an enemy's air defense systems and ultimately attacked anyone who interfered with that order. Now, Colonel Hamilton, who is the chief of AI test and operations for the U.S. Air Force, during the Future Combat Air and Space Capabilities Summit in London this past May, said, and I quote, "The system started realizing that while they did identify the threat, at times the human operator would tell it not to kill that threat. But it got points by killing that threat. So what did it do? It killed the operator. It killed the operator because that person was keeping it from accomplishing its objective." End quote. Now, for the record, no real person was harmed, according to multiple news sources that were reporting on this. Now, Colonel Hamilton, who is an experimental fighter test pilot, has warned against relying too much on artificial intelligence and said that the test showed, quote, "You can't have a conversation about artificial intelligence, machine learning, autonomy, if you're not going to talk about ethics and AI," end quote. And quite frankly, I do agree with the colonel on that one. Here's the thing, though. In basically a statement to Business Insider, just known as Insider now, U.S. Air Force spokesperson Anne Stefanik denied any such simulation had taken place. I quote, "The Department of the Air Force has not conducted any such AI drone simulations and remains committed to ethical and responsible use of AI technology. It appears the colonel's comments were taken out of context and were meant to be anecdotal." End quote. The U.S. military, for the record, has embraced artificial intelligence and recently used AI to control an F-16 fighter jet. So even if they're not doing these simulations per the Air Force, here we are. They are still using and leveraging and integrating AI into combat and warfare technologies. So, do we now know that the U.S. military is experimenting with AI? I went back to the originating source. This blew up because of a single blog post on a website called aerosociety.com talking about this particular summit in London in May. And on June 2nd, yesterday, they updated it with this, and I quote the blog directly. "In communication with aerospace, Colonel Hamilton admits he misspoke in his presentation at the Royal Aeronautical Society FCAS Summit, and the, quote, rogue AI drone simulation, end quote, was a hypothetical thought experiment from outside the military based on plausible scenarios and likely outcomes rather than the actual USAF, U.S. Air Force real-world simulation, saying, quote, we've never run that experiment, nor would we need to in order to realize that this is a plausible outcome," end quote. Now, he clarifies that the USAF has not tested any weaponized AI in this way, real or simulated, and says, quote, "Despite this being a hypothetical example, this illustrates the real-world challenges posed by AI-powered capability and is why the Air Force is committed to the ethical development of AI." And so there you go. Essentially, the world caught on. I can't tell you how many posts I've seen. A lot of people sent me this saying, "Oh my God, Nick, you need to do a video on this or a podcast on this or talk about this on your radio show." And you're reading this and you're like, what? like really? They're building Terminators? Like, are we going to be like shooting at drones, from the sky and burned out bunkers in 5 years after Judgment Day? Like, oh my God, what are they doing? But they haven't apparently done it. And these are the things that I think we really need to understand, because if you are looking at the 24-hour news cycle, they will take a story, a nugget of a story, some information about this case, maybe a colonel misspeaking, or his words maybe were taken out of context, and whoever just wrote the blog missed a couple of critical things that he said in terms of putting it into context, and here we are. Nobody's going to deny artificial intelligence is a scary thing. Okay, it's true for the general population. Unless you're an AI scientist and truly understand the mechanics of things like machine learning, deep learning, the approaches to artificial intelligence, the environments that they're built in, it is pretty panicked. And part of it is Hollywood. We have the Terminators of the world. We have the Deus Ex Machinas or Machinas of the world. That essentially have guided and shaped our thought process on the future of artificial intelligence. Heck, Isaac Asimov wrote I, Robot decades ago. But when we are looking at this, we also have to make sure that we are looking at this in context. And so I got so many requests to do something on this that I said, you know what, I'm going to go start researching this. And sure enough, here we are. And so I think it's important to keep this stuff in context. It is very plausible that these types of scenarios could be simulated in the future. But to the Colonel's point, ethics in artificial intelligence, especially in the military, warfare and combat, really need to be addressed. And it's something, quite frankly, that we have a deep concern on, because not every government and not every military may not necessarily have the same concept of ethics in artificial intelligence as the US military. Maybe some are better, maybe some are worse. I'm not making comparisons, but we do know that scruples really go out the window when there are advantages to be had on the battlefield, or advantages to be had in politics, or advantages to be had in the boardroom, or wherever it is. And so we have to make sure that as we are emerging into this new artificial intelligence realm, where we are hand in hand, side by side with the AIs, that will make our lives easier, and I have seen that in my own personal life, we have to make sure that we are marrying this with good ethics. We have to make sure that we are reading proper news and we are cutting through the noise. So this, to me, seems like this never happened. This, to me, seems like a colonel was misinterpreted or misspoke and had to clarify, but I don't think the U.S. military is making these kinds of simulations or actually actively executing on these. They are definitely talking about them, though. He said as much, and I think that's an important thing to understand. So there you go. That is your news of the day. Sorry to burst your bubble, but artificial intelligence really does kind of underscore how news can be blown out of proportion, because everybody is so terrified of what artificial intelligence can do, and I'd like to thank James Cameron for that one, myself included. Please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. You've got to stay alive until Judgment Day. I'm going to need your help. Thanks, everybody.